What's up, y'all? We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. As always, I am your host, Justin Michael. Hope everybody's having a good Friday morning. Good morning to everybody out there rocking with us on YouTube. If you wouldn't mind throwing us a thumbs up, say what's up in the Toyota chat while you're at it. Good morning to all of you guys. We've got a fun show planned today. We're going to get into the latest conference realignment drama. This saga never seems to end between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. It's only intensifying here, and I think it's going to pick up over the next couple of months. I'm going to give my thoughts on that. I'm going to give a couple of thoughts on how this could all play out for both these leagues, who I feel the top targets are realistically for the Pac-12. Obviously, they need to add at least one football program. I think 2 is the more ideal number from a scheduling standpoint. We'll talk about some roster updates for CSU football, as well as them bringing in former Steelers GM and 2-time Super Bowl winner Kevin Colbert as a consultant. He's going to assist Jay Norvell in kind of building a front office for CSU football. Just continues what has been the NFLization of college football. There's really, it's never been, as close to the NFL as it is right now, especially just with how all of this is working from a roster building standpoint. Could certainly use a little bit more structure like the NFL free agency process, but I think we're getting closer to that anyways. Especially as we get revenue sharing and all that. We'll talk hoops at the very end. We'll give the latest power rankings, talk about some fun games to watch this weekend. CSU men's basketball riding a 4-game win streak, but they're on a bye this week. Have an opportunity to get the legs fresh, an opportunity for CSU fans to look around the league. A big matchup between a couple of contenders. We'll talk about all of that at the end. But like I said, we are going to start with the conference realignment drama because I think that's what everybody's most interested in. At this stage, Gloria Nevarez released a statement on Wednesday. I guess I'll read it real quick. I didn't read it yesterday, but a good deal of speculation has recently been offered by various media outlets regarding the current and future status of the Mountain West and other collegiate athletic conferences. While I cannot and will not comment on other leagues, I can share some facts about the Mountain West. First, the 7-member institutions who are the foundation of the Mountain West have fully committed to the future of the conference. Each member has cemented that commitment by executing a grant of rights agreement that's significant, effective July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2032. Second, the conference and its foundational institutions are successfully executing a future membership strategy that will ensure the strength and stability of the Mountain West through June 30th, 2026 and into the future. Basically, we're not going to read the rest, but saying that the 7 remaining Mountain West schools, as well as the schools that they're adding, have a strategic plan. Everybody's in line. They've got a bold new future coming. All the stuff you're used to hearing from commissioners. It's funny to me because it's not surprising, but whether you're on the Mountain West side of things or the Pac-12 in terms of your allegiances moving forward online, it seems like that's you interpreted this as a win for you. I saw so many pro Mountain West accounts being like, see, boom, they signed the GOR, end all the speculation. It's done. People on the Pac-12 side of things pointed out that typically commissioners don't release these types of public statements when they're operating from positions of strength. Reality is the truth is probably somewhere in between. If they truly did sign a grant of rights, that could make things murky for sure, but it also doesn't guarantee anything. Just being realistic, you could always pay the buyout if you were UNLV, and ultimately what this is all going to come down to is what happens with the poaching penalties. They're owed about $55 million as is. The Pac-12 suing the Mountain West, saying those are unconstitutional. We'll see what happens there, but people much smarter than me think that there could be a decent chance the Pac-12 gets those thrown out altogether. There's also a lot of speculation about the $17 million exit fees for each school, and those tend to be negotiable tend to be negotiable as well. There's a real possibility you buy him down. I know John Canzano floated in like the $10 to $12 million range. If you did that though, and across 7 Mountain West schools, you're saving, like 35, 40 million bucks, potentially even more if you can negotiate down. If you save all that money and you get the 55 million in poaching fees thrown out, now all of a sudden, if you're the Pac-12, you've got this money to spend, whether that be to go get UNLV, other Mountain West schools. I know Canzano floated Nevada as a package deal with UNLV this week, which surprised me. I've never seen Nevada be in the conversation, at least up until this point. Maybe I guess that could be a negotiation ploy for UNLV. Like if the regents were dead set on the schools staying together, he did talk about that. I just don't really see it. To me, like New Mexico would be much more desirable than Nevada. UNLV is the more desirable of all those schools. But if you were going to take 2 Mountain West schools, I would take New Mexico. Why not get another state? Why not get the Pitt and New Mexico basketball? It seems like they're trying to invest in football a little bit more these last couple of years, at least inching closer towards, the standard of some of these other programs. But it's going to be really interesting to see how all of this pans out. There's a court session scheduled for March in terms of those poaching penalties in the lawsuit. I've said since the beginning, it feels inevitable that they come to some type of negotiation with all of this. I just don't see either side wanting it to draw out for months and months in court and hanging in limbo. If you're the Mountain West, you need a resolution just as much as the Pac-12 does, because they promised all this money to UNLV, to Air Force, as well as the other members. They're all supposed to get a portion of these poaching penalties. And now all of a sudden, if you're not getting the millions and millions of dollars that the Mountain West promised you, even if you have a step up in terms of the media rights deal, I've seen some floated numbers that would be a step up from the Mountain West right now, around $5 million a year. If they can get $5 million a year, I would assume that the Pac-12 could get a minimum of 10, hoping for more than that, but we shall see. 10 probably is closer to the realistic side than the over optimistic side. But if you get creative in terms of, being open to streaming and some stuff like that, it was reported that Apple was willing to pay the Pac-12 pretty good money back in the day for their media rights evaluation. They wanted to stay on traditional cable. That's always kind of been the mindset for these leagues. But given the future of media consumption, just given how big streaming is moving forward, I do wonder if that could be a way that the Pac-12 could be different than some of the other leagues. And maybe maybe you get creative, like maybe you keep football as a part of cable. Like if you could come to some type of deal with Turner, and they've got like Max and all that, like have a lot of football games on TNT and TBS and the CW, and then maybe you give a significant portion of basketball games, primetime basketball, like on Max or Apple or whatever you might do. I do think you have to think outside the box. I do think it's very clear that that's what the Pac-12 is going to do. They're not just going to approach this like everybody else, and I think that's smart. I think you've got to get creative. I think they learned that from just kind of watching this entire process. You can't stay stagnant or you're going to get left behind. And reportedly the Pac-12 ADs met this week in California. That makes me think that we're getting closer to some type of resolution with all this, or at least a clearer vision of what this future Pac-12 is going to look like, how this is all going to shake out between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. Admittedly, I think it's going to be a bad spot for the Mountain West if they don't get those poaching penalties, because I really do feel like at that point, UNLV takes a hard look at the future of the league without all that money to help, kind of pay for some of the debt you have right now. Is it really worth it? And I would think no. I know there have been a lot of UNLV fans. I wouldn't say they're necessarily legitimate sources, but have claimed that it's, P4 bus for UNLV. They're going to hold out for a Big 12 invite. I don't see that happening by staying around and playing New Mexico and UTEP in the Mountain West. Like maybe, I guess, if they just ran the table every year, became like a mid-2000s Boise State. And there is certainly enough money in Vegas to kind of make that happen. If the locals truly did go all in, if the casino moguls went all in on UNLV, that's never really happened though. And that's why, as much as I feel like UNLV is one of the prize targets in all of this, especially between the Mountain West and the Pac-12. I've always kind of felt like their value is a little bit overstated. There's not a ton of local interest. You look at even the last couple of years when they've had success, they don't rank high in TV viewership. Attendance is up, which is good for them. And they've obviously spent money. They've made some good hires, going out and getting Dan Mullen. That's significant. They brought in talent. I think they have an opportunity here to be a pretty good football team for the next couple of years. But choosing to stay put with this Mountain West, and I've always been a Mountain West guy, so I'm not trying to make it seem like I'm calling them the big sky or something like that. I've got a lot of love for these programs, but I've also pointed out that this is a business, and there's a reason that the top schools from the Mountain West, as well as the remaining Pac-12, Washington State and Oregon State, had never really been interested in a full reverse merger. There's just some schools at the bottom that don't invest enough significantly to be willing to bet that they're going to help you with this bold vision. And that's what all these schools are trying to do, is be bold. They're trying to take a swing. You can say, what are we going to do? Which was kind of the Joe Parker approach for a long time. Felt like we were on a sinking ship. It's night and day to see the type of moves that are happening, with an administration that actually cares about trying new things, trying to make a difference instead of just saying, oh, shucks, what are we going to do? Poor CSU. We don't have Bama money. We don't have Michigan money. Guess we're out of luck. Like, you can do that, but you're going to get left behind. And I'm excited. And based on everything that I've heard, I think there's a lot of confidence about the direction of the Pac-12. I think these schools that are leaving from the Mountain West feel very confident. And I think it's going to be the right decision for them. As far as what happens next with all this and kind of ranking the expansion targets, and again, before all of the media rights happens, I would assume there's at least some traction with the lawsuit, and same thing with the expansion targets, because you've got to know how much money are you going to have to work with to potentially negotiate with the buyout process for schools like Memphis, Tulane, UNLV, whoever it may be. But you need at least one football program. I think from an ideal standpoint, you would get two. A 9-team league is really solid from a scheduling standpoint. I believe my buddy Aaron pointed this out on Twitter. The Mountain West used to be that for a couple years, and it actually makes scheduling really easy. Everybody plays everybody. It's easy to get the buys in a 9-game schedule. Like, you just have some flexibility, or in a 9-team conference, I should say. Then obviously you have Gonzaga. So you have 10 members for basketball, which allows you to have an 18-game basketball conference like the Mountain West used to have. I do wonder, depending on who you add, like if you add another full team, like a Memphis, would you kick the tires on some other basketball only members? If you St. Mary's or Creighton, like if you could get Memphis involved, now you've got Gonzaga, San Diego State, CSU, Boise, Utah State. Those are solid programs. Would Creighton consider it, especially if a team like UConn ultimately ended up in the mix? And I know that feels like a bit of a stretch given the drastic travel, and I don't know if that would be the most ideal. I also don't think you could turn down UConn if they really were interested. And a lot of people have, when I've brought up UConn, said like, well, why would they leave? They've got a great thing going in the Big East from a basketball standpoint, and they do from a basketball standpoint. But their football program is independent, and they're spending a lot of money to basically be in limbo. And if you could get them as a full member, I think there's a lot of value there. And now all of a sudden, if you bring in a UConn, I do think, like a Creighton or a St. Mary's would be very much, in the, at least interested. Taylor says, Big and SEC are fighting over UNLV right now. They're the next Bama, I think Memphis is still your top target. I think not only does that fully cement you as the best of the rest in terms of the other league, they are the best remaining G5, whatever you want to call it, most realistic target that you can get. That basketball league would be incredible. They're a really formidable football program with great backing. It gets you into more time zones, gets you into different part of the country. Now, do they need a travel partner? That's where that gets kind of interesting. Do you just go ahead and bring Tulane with them at that point? I've argued consistently that Tulane, much like UNLV and much like, Texas State, for instance, when people bring up, well, it gets you into New Orleans, like in Louisiana, I guess technically speaking, geographically, but how many people in Louisiana are locked in on Tulane. I'd assume that most Tulane, students, even if they go there from the area, are probably LSU fans. And, like a lot of Texas State fans, there's probably a lot of A&M and Texas Longhorns shirts on that Texas State campus. I'm skeptical of how much you really get them. I get that there's a business side of this, and the TV executives really just care about the market size and the amount of TVs that could theoretically be watching the league. I've just always pointed out that it feels a little bit romanticized of like, yeah, we're in this great city, but is anybody in that great city going to give a crap about your league? I think that's highly debatable. Memphis would be my top target. UNLV, I think, makes a lot of sense geographically. They do want to keep the majority of this conference in the West. Tulane just doesn't do much for me. I'm with you, Aaron. He says, I think Tulane is a flash in the pan. They don't have long-term success to make me want to add them. And that's kind of what I feel about Texas State. It's what I feel about UTSA, although UTSA has been a little bit more sustained than some of those other teams. But I do think from a travel partner standpoint, if they help you get Memphis, also helps you further kneecap the AAC. And I believe Tulane is in the Eastern time zone, not 100%. They could be Central. That could help you raise your media evaluation. Just the more time zones you have, that's why all these mega conferences are forming. They're kind of annoying, and they're kind of a logistical nightmare for all your Olympic sports, which is something I do think you need to consider here. Like, don't put your Olympic athletes through hell and spend out the money so that you can raise your media evaluation by like $2 million. If it's only going to add a small sliver to add a school like Tulane or South Florida or whatever, then just stay located in the West. Like, UConn's a different discussion to me because they're arguably the best basketball program in the country, and having them and Gonzaga, I think from a media rights standpoint, would really put the Pac-12 in a different tier of basketball leagues. Outside of them, Texas State, I guess, but they would have to drastically up their spending. I love New Mexico basketball, so you could talk me into that, and I'd be behind it. No interest in Nevada whatsoever. There's a reason. There's a reason that their football program is in the position that they're in. I know they are investing big time in basketball and baseball and stuff like that, and I guess that could help you. But just, they don't do much for me. Sacramento State, gross. The hoops only options are intriguing to me, assuming that you do fill out the rest of your football league with, a solid target. I think if Texas State, for instance, is the only school that you add, it's going to feel like pretty underwhelming. Now, if it's Texas State and Memphis, still a little bit underwhelming, but you went out and you got Memphis. I think you can talk yourself into that objectively being a success. It's going to be really interesting to see how this pans out, but I'm guessing that like right around the end of the college basketball season, the end of second semester, we're going to have some answers with how all this is going to pan out. I think it's going to intensify here pretty quickly. Based on everything that's being reported nationally, the future Pac-12 ADs got an update as far as like the business side is going, what the media rights are like, what the expansion stuff is right. That's the biggest priority for the league moving forward. Is obviously you got to fill out your league because you've only got one more year in the Mountain West to make all of this happen, and it's going to be a very weird year in the conference. It's going to be a lot like being divorced and living with your ex-wife for another couple of years. There's going to be some palpable tension between the schools. It's going to be fun though. It's good theater. It's good drama. We're going to move on here in just a sec, but Joey B in the Toyota chat says, Justin, any chance that Cal and Stanford would come back to a Pac-12 2.0? Sounds like those schools are starting to see the travel costs being a real burden, especially for the Olympic sport programs. I guess never say never. It feels unlikely to me in the short term. Maybe in the long run, if you're able to create a league that, lives up to what the vision is from all these programs, and you're rolling and you got a, 3-4 bid league in the tournament side every year. And, you've got football programs that are getting access to the college football playoff and like really competing. Then I do think that they would consider it. With what the perception of the league is right now, I don't know. And the tricky part with them is academics are a big factor, and like they're just not going to want to be associated with schools like Boise and Fresno, and then if you put like a Nevada in the mix, especially schools like that. So they feel less likely than anything to me, but you never know. I'll never say never in modern college football. All right, keep the questions rolling. We can come back to them, and I'll get to them at the end of the show if you want to talk more realignment, potential options, all that. I'm definitely down. We do got to pay the bills real quick, though. Then we're going to talk CSU football. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics, the official vehicle of DNVR. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, they built durable legends destined for greatness, perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the Tacoma, check out the Land Cruiser. They've got a little bit of something for everybody, though. If trucks are not your game, they've got great sedan options. They've got great mid-size SUVs. They've got 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the 4Runner. They've got more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck, and not to be outdone, Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. When you're cruising around, when you're in your Toyota, maybe you're in the mountains, maybe you're on I-25, pop on your Shady Rays, get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized lenses that won't break the bank. They're an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product that's rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. They have crystal clear optics. They're super durable. And if you do happen to break them, which is going to be tough, but if you do, you can rest easy because every single pair is backed by lost and broken replacements. I personally have 3 pairs of Shady Rays. I wear them everywhere. Wear them when I'm walking the dog, when I'm in the pool. I'm clearly blind. Honestly, could use some prescription sunglasses, but your boy is broke. What I love about Shady Rays is they're polarized. They take away all the glare, but it doesn't feel like I'm walking in the dark, which is the case with some sunglasses, especially because I'm blind. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays giving out the best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com. Use that code DNVR for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right. Shout out to everybody in the Toyota chats popping this morning. I appreciate everybody rocking with us. Say good morning, be nice, all that fun stuff. We're going to move on. We can talk more realignment later if you want. Put your questions, comments, etc. in there. We'll star them. We'll get to them at the end. I'm always down. I do have a couple other things I want to hit on today, and we got to keep this show on track as best as possible. So let's talk about CSU football. Reportedly adding Steelers GM Kevin Colbert as a consultant to help Jay Norvell build a front office. And, they've already gone out and they've added a GM. So they're really going all in this modern era of college football. It's encouraging because like I said before, a lot like with the Pac-12 stuff, it did feel like for a couple of years there outside of the stadium, which was obviously huge, there was just kind of a, well, what are we supposed to do approach from the administration? And whether you look at the commitment to adding more position coaches and like GAs and stuff like that for football, or stuff like this, and helping build up a front office, bringing in a real GM, director of scouting, all that type of stuff, they're taking big swings. And I'm not entirely sure like how active Kevin Colbert is going to be. Is it going to be a consistent process? Is it just going to be like, here's some names, we'll help you get this set up and running, and then I'm out? We'll have to see. But I mean, this was a guy that worked in the Steelers organization for 20 years. He was the director of general operations, got promoted to GM in 2010, held that role for over a decade, won 2 Super Bowls. He's largely credited with the Steelers identifying some of their top prospects like Ben Roethlisberger, like Troy Polamalu. This guy knows what he's doing. And one of the things that's been so great for the Steelers has been their infrastructure. They're not one of these franchises that constantly has drama. They've had like 3 coaches in 50 years. Their GMs hold the position for a decade plus. They have stability because they hire and they empower the right type of people. And what I love about what CSU is doing right now is they're going out and they're getting people with a level of expertise in areas where our coaches maybe don't have as much experience. And the game has changed so much the last couple of years. It is just too much for 1 to 2 people to manage. You need people to be focused on roster retention and recruitment and all that full time. You need people to be coaching full time. Like it's so much to manage now. And what I love about CSU is that they're taking a chance. I've seen some snarky replies to all of this, like, what does it even matter? The players are only going to go to the highest bidder anyways. And sometimes that is the case. Sometimes you're just going to get outbid. That's not universal though. And honestly, the fact that we have less resources than some of these big programs is exactly why you need to hire smart people like Kevin Colbert, like Alex Collins, so that you can invest the resources that you do have wisely and maximize your potential. I'm hesitant to compare it to the Oakland A's because I don't know if anybody necessarily wants to be the Oakland A's in 2024, but let's think more like 2000s Oakland A's going to the playoffs every year, winning the division, that type of stuff. Moneyball Oakland A's. How important was having somebody like Billy Beane? They didn't have the same resources as the Yankees, as the Red Sox. So they had to think differently, and they had to empower smart people to think out the box, to take different approaches. And the Rams are doing that right now. And it's really, really exciting. There's no guarantee that all of this is going to pan out, but I like that they're at least trying. I like that they're taking a swing by going to the Pac-12. I like that they're bringing in somebody from Ole Miss like Alex Collins to help you recruit and manage all of this chaos. I like that, and I'm reporting this, CSU has not confirmed it. I like that, Norvell is giving, some reins of the offense to a play caller. And I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by the direction of the program right now. Again, like how much of a role does he end up filling for the program in the end? We shall see. But Norvell's a guy who has always drawn from his NFL experiences. He's been really open about that. I've talked about since his very first recruiting class, it was really evident that he views roster building and recruitment a lot like the NFL draft, which is not necessarily the case with some of the staffs before. It's not that they didn't look for athletic traits, because that would be wrong. But it's that athletic traits matter more than anything when it comes to Norvell and his recruiting approach. It's not positional experience. It's not how refined you are. It's, do you run a 4.4? What's your hand size, all this type of stuff. And it seems a little bit silly on the outside, but it also works. And it's why they've been able to pretty consistently find some diamonds in the rough, guys that are overlooked by other programs. They love versatility. They love multi-sport athletes. And speaking of one, Cannon Valenzuela, who was actually one of the first commits for the most recent class, he has now been bumped up to a 4-star recruit by 247 Sports. If you've listened to the pod consistently, I've been really high on Cannon since the beginning. It was a little surprising to me that his initial recruiting interest was like Air Force, Army, and CSU Pueblo, some schools like that. Houston did come in on him late, but he remained committed to CSU. He was really impressive in the interview I had with him last June. He's a 4-sport athlete, and I think he's going to be a star. I really do. And I'm usually pretty hesitant to say stuff like that because I think it's easy to get lost in the sauce. I think recruiting hype can mostly just be hype and not necessarily substance. But this kid can do it all. He's going to play linebacker, played wide receiver and safety in high school. This past year, he had 89 catches for just under 1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns, 26 touchdown catches over the last 2 years. Then defensively, 136 total tackles, 9 PBU, 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles as a safety for Jacksboro. He's going to be a monster. I'm really excited about him. Feels a lot like Owen Long, who's a very similar background, running back, safety, played baseball. And they bring him in and he just makes plays right away as a linebacker at CSU. I think his future is very bright. And if you missed that interview, I shared it from the DNVR Rams Twitter yesterday. Encourage you to go back and listen to it again because he's a really impressive young man. I guess we'll get into the roster update and then we'll do another break before we do the power ranking. I had it, I think somebody pointed it out on Ram Nation initially, but this was sent over to me. Jalen Gardner no longer listed on the roster for CSU football. That's a bummer. I'm assuming that means medical retirement, which I had heard in Tucson was on the table for him. Really a bummer. It seemed there were a couple times throughout the season where it sounded like he was close, and then maybe he had a setback or maybe the The injury was just worse than anticipated, but sounds like it's a pretty serious neck deal. Really unfortunate. I thought he had a bright future. I would have said in November that he would have been in line to start for CSU. So that's a bummer. You wish him well. I also noticed that Giles Pooler no longer listed on the roster, either walk-on quarterback, been a depth guy the last couple of years, did make one start. I believe he technically has 1 year of eligibility to play still if he wants. Did get his degree, I believe, though. So we'll see. He could just be done. Maybe he looks for an opportunity to play somewhere because he can play. Like, he throws a good enough ball that he could play somewhere. Has been a great teammate. His mom's a CSU professor. Certainly wish him well, regardless of what he decides. I also noticed there's a portal edition that was not announced. CSU bringing in a legacy transfer from New Mexico, which you love to see. We'll see if I can get his name right. 6'4", 260-pound edge. Originally at a Regis High School, went to Cal, didn't play there, then went to New Mexico this past year and led them in sacks. Moso Ipala Tuetele, yes. Moso Ipala Tuetelele, something like that. It's really close. I'm going to keep working on it. He's got a great frame. He can get after the quarterback in a hurry. 6'4", 260, had 34 tackles and 4 sacks in 2024. Seems like he could be a guy that helps, make up for the loss of Gabe Kershke, of Newer Gatcoot. They're going to be pretty dependent on some young talent, and I think they're going to need some guys that they've signed through these last couple of cycles, much like what we've said about offensive line, and it's going to be a key in the trenches there as well. You're going to need to hit on some of these homegrown guys, but being able to find some of these transfers to help fill the gaps, especially one with CSU roots, Colorado kid, you love to see it. And again, you're going to need help there because you saw a lot of pass rushing production go out the door. I think you're really excited about the future for people like Jack Moran. Andrew Lorich is one of my favorite guys on that defensive side. He'll really be him and Hector will be like the only key contributors from last year that are still in the mix. And Owen Long, obviously. But I'm excited. I think they're doing a good job of filling the holes. I loved what they did in the secondary. They've added some really intriguing talent at linebacker. I'm actually writing about that today. Hopefully should be out for you today or tomorrow. They're going to be athletic. They're going to be athletic on the defensive side. Certainly some question marks, just given the amount of production that you've lost. There's always going to be some quirks in the process. When you have that many new pieces, how quickly can you get everything to mesh? But I think they're going to play aggressively. I think they're going to rely on that speed. And you might give up some big plays, but I think they're going to cause a little bit more havoc than we saw the last couple of years as well, which I'm all for. We're going to transition over to hoops again. If you've got more questions, comments, etc., keep them coming in the Toyota chat. Love how active it is in the comment section today. We can talk about whatever we want in the final segment. I do want to briefly talk hoops, though. Real quick, do want to shout out a couple of our longtime partners, great friends of mine specifically, Breckenridge Brewery. We got a lot of love for Breck Brew at DNVR. We've got a lot of love for Breck Brew in my family. My girlfriend actually has worked for Breck for over a decade now. They're a great company. The farmhouse is amazing. They've got great food, great drinks. They've been doing it for over 30 years, and there's nothing better than chilling out, grilling, having an ice-cold Avalanche ale in hand. It just hits every single time. And also make sure you check out the Breck Brew Ice Deck giveaway. You can win 2 VIP tickets on the glass, plus complimentary food and drink. Really live like a baller for a March 28th game between the Avs and St. Louis Blues. The Avs actually taking on the Blues tonight. I will be there rocking coverage for DNVR. Got a lot going on between hockey and college hoops right now. But check out breckbrew.com/ice deck to enter. You can find the link in my show notes as well. And also make sure you check out the Breck Beer Locator at breckbrew.com to find a brew near you. Avalanche Amber Ale, fun slinger, fun to say, fun to drink. Good company, hard seltzers. They've got a little bit of something for everybody. We love Breck Brew. We also love Saturday Neon. Saturday Neon, it's a local company. It was admittedly started by a pair of buffs. You can boo for a second, but they've got great products for everybody. They've been awesome to us. They've hooked the DNVR studio up with awesome LED neon signs. They hooked me up with one. So they're homies for sure. And what they do is they make officially licensed collegiate logo LED neon signs that are perfect for your home, for your office, for your dorm, for your man cave, whatever. Check out all their new essentials collection. They've got 50 of the biggest schools across the country. These LED options that they have rolled out of late, a lot lighter, easier to hang, and much more affordable. They're only $75. The LEDs last up to 100,000 hours, so you can enjoy it for years. Super easy to install. I just put a wall anchor in, screw it in, boom, nice and easy. And when you use the code DNVR, you're going to save 10% off. Great option for you, for a Ram fan in your life. Anybody you know, check out Saturday Neon. They are the homies, as are all of you guys. I appreciate all the love. I appreciate everybody rocking with us. We've got some funny comments in the Toyota chat. Rejected taglines. Breck Brew hits like my stepdad. Oh, that was amazing. I can't say that, but you can. Shout out to you, Steve. Love your abs coverage, Justin. You sure cover a lot of ground. I don't sleep very much. That's just really what it comes down to. I watch a lot of sports, but I'm thankful. And I'm thankful that people like you guys are willing to let me live my dream and ramble on and make all of this knowledge that I have worth something, because otherwise I think I'd just be annoying a lot of colleagues in like a kitchen somewhere like I did when I was 17, 18 years old. Let's get into our Mountain West basketball power ranking. The Rams are on the rise. Got as high as 3 so far in the rankings. We'll see where they come in today. We'll start at the bottom. We'll work our way to the top. Sometimes this can drag on, so I've been trying to make it a little bit faster of a process. I think the bottom is easy. Air Force, they're 0-10 in the league, 11-game losing streak. Don't need to say much else about them. Important to avoid losses like that, against teams like that, I should say, for CSU. Then we've got Fresno, who's been friskier of late. I honestly consider jumping them over Nevada just because Nevada's body language, it just pisses me off. I hate watching them. They have talent, but they've just got this wet blanket attitude. I don't think Alfred's a good coach either, but they frustrate me. I've got Fresno at 10, 5-16. They're 1-9, 3-game losing streak. They've played competitively though. You know, they took Nevada at OT. Going to the pits, not easy. They lose a tough one to CSU, and then they lose in overtime to Wyoming in a game that they should have won. I do think it's good that we've already played both games against them. They're a little frisky. They're a team you'd like to avoid in the Mountain West tournament, potentially. Although I guess I'd take my chances with that matchup over Ethan Taylor and Air Force potentially hitting 15 threes on you. I've got Nevada at 9. They're 11-10, which is just crazy. 3-7 in the league. They have also lost 3 straight. Utah State, San Diego State, and Boise. So hard games, but they're just not a good team. They're one of those groups that they could be dangerous in the Mountain West if they just got their attitude together for 3 days in Vegas or something like that. But right now, I don't see a path to them finishing in the top half, and I certainly don't see them winning 4 games in 4 days. Although we saw New Mexico do it last year. I've got UNLV at 7. They're 11-10, 5-5. They've lost 3 in a row: Wyoming, New Mexico, and Utah State. I think they're a better team than Wyoming, but they just don't have the consistency. They're so hot and cold. This is such a peak UNLV. You get them on the wrong night, and Deaton Thomas might go for 25 and 12 on you. I just don't know if they have the pieces around him to be a consistent threat. I've got Wyoming at 6, mostly just because I think they're the friskiest of these bad teams. I guess we skipped over San Jose State. Shout out to Tim Miles and San Jose State. They're frisky as well. They've blown a couple of games that they should have won. Otherwise, I'd have them a little bit higher. They should have beat San Diego State. They were up double digits on them. They had Boise on the ropes. They did beat New Mexico, so maybe I should have them over UNLV. Yeah, I've got Wyoming at 6 just because I think they play hard. They did beat Fresno. I don't think they're a good team, but Agbeam's a guy that can go for 30 on you, and they play hard, so I'll give them that. Boise at 5, coming off of a win over Nevada. Wasn't overtly impressive. They've got to show more against some of the top teams. I have San Diego State at 4. I thought about jumping them with Boise. They are on a 3-game win streak technically. Air Force, Nevada, and San Jose State. They should have lost to Air Force and San Jose State. They were down double digits in both those games. Air Force especially, they pulled it out of their butt, and congrats to them for doing it. They're still a dangerous team. Like when it turns on, they're still scary. They still got that defensive intensity. Miles Bird will just hit like 4 threes from Steph Curry range. That's where he prefers to shoot. He doesn't even have to do it. There'll be 3 feet between him and the 3-point line, and he pulls up from there. He's a great 3-point shooter. They're dangerous. They're hard to bet on, and I think they're in dangerous territory of potentially blowing an at-large bid, which seemed like a lock, like a month ago. I've got CSU at 3. Big opportunity. We talked about it a lot yesterday. These next 3-4 games, you can win a couple of these. You are realistic title contenders. But right now, I think CSU has been more stable than San Diego State and Boise State, but I think their ceiling has looked less high than New Mexico or Utah State, if that seems fair. I've got New Mexico at 2. They were 1 last week. It kind of goes back and forth. They play Utah State this weekend, so we'll kind of settle it. They're on a 3-game win streak. Boise, Fresno, and UNLV. Utah State also a 3-game win streak. Nevada, Air Force, and UNLV, neither of them with a ton of significant wins of late, but they've just been steady. They're taking care of business. Utah State wasn't great the other night against UNLV. That was one where if UNLV had any type of juice like they did against San Diego State, they probably could have stole it early on in the year. But they pulled it out. They get such great shots. They've got a multitude of guys that can beat you from deep. They're just a really solid functioning basketball team. And when they get going offensively, they can just bury you. Absolutely bury you. All right, let me take a water break real quick, and then we'll get into these final questions, comments, etc. Get on out of here. Eric wants to know thoughts on Colorado State going to the Pac-12. I think it's the right move. I think it's the only move, my friend. The fortune favors the bold, and you've got to take a big swing. You're not in a position where you could afford to stand pat. The Mountain West as is. Very fun league. I've known it my entire life, but I would rather bet on being associated with Gonzaga, with Oregon State, with Washington State, Boise State, and San Diego State than with San Jose State and Nevada and New Mexico, and most certainly the teams that the Mountain West is backfilled with. And that's where it becomes especially evident. Like, maybe it was a debate before all those teams left, but now all of a sudden, if the question is, well, would you rather play football against Washington State, Boise, and Oregon State, and basketball against Gonzaga and San Diego State, or do you want to play UTEP? New Mexico's a great basketball program. Losing the Pitt's a big bummer to me. I hope that CSU and New Mexico play annually in the non-conference slate and kind of try and make that an established, regional rivalry that you have in the non-con. I've got a lot of love for Albuquerque, even Wyoming. Like, obviously I'm a CSU guy. The thought of CSU and Wyoming not being in the same league, it's weird to me. Admittedly, I'm not as emotional when it comes to Air Force, and I actually was arguing about it with my little brother the other night. He's become such a big Mountain West fan, and I love to see it because, like, growing up, he wasn't quite as into all this as I was, and now he's maybe even a bigger fan than I am, which is awesome. But he's like, it's just gonna be weird. Like, I like playing Air Force every year. They're in the same state, and I get it. It's what we've known. Honestly, it's probably me being petty more than anything. I just think they're such a pain in the ass. They bullied CSU in football. They're always frisky, and they take joy in trying to play spoilers against CSU in hoops. I'm not going to miss playing them that much. It'll be weird. It'll be different. Maybe you play Air Force and non-con too. I mean, you're going to have to fill the non-con slate. And if you can do it against D1 opponents, we don't have to travel that far. Maybe instead of schools like DU, you play Air Force. I'd rather play DU, to be honest, but it's time to try something else, because all these other leagues went out and were bold, and there was all this movement. It puts you in a position where you had to get creative. No, it's not quite the appeal of joining, the Big 12 in 2014. It's not going to get the respect of an established Power 4 conference, but honestly, to me, I think that's semantics, because as long as you have access to the college football playoff, you're getting multi-bids into the NCAA tournament, you're in a good spot, and you can make a pretty good argument that really, what is the gap between the Big 12 and the Pac-12 in 2025? A Big 12 without Oklahoma, without Texas. It's a fun league. But it's not the SEC. It's not the Big 10. And the ACC, outside of a really small portion at the top, the Clemsons, Florida States, and Miamis of the world, maybe North Carolina some years. Like, is that really that much better either? I don't know. I don't think those leagues get put on the same tier as like the SEC or the Big 10, and maybe the Pac-12 is not on their tier either, but I think the gap between the Big 12 and the Pac-12, it's a lot closer than the gap between the Big 12 and the SEC per se. You got to do what you can. If you can build up a league that's consistently competitive, that's fun, that maybe has some unique time slots and is able to establish its own audience, kind of like the Pac-12 After Dark back in the day, I think you have an opportunity to really build up a league that's fun and certainly gets more respect than the current Mountain West or the American or anything like that. And to me, it's all semantics. No, it's maybe not a Power Four league, but it's the best of the rest. It's the best option that you have. Kyle says, you think the Mountain West remnants get petty scheduling with the new pack? It's possible, especially it feels much less likely in football than it does in basketball, mostly because the football scheduling is done by administrators, by ADs. Basketball scheduling, that's more the coaches themselves. And I know that some conversations, for instance, between CSU and New Mexico have already taken place. Aaron Katsuma, who was on the CSU staff for a long time, he's now on Patino's staff. Like, these are things that are being discussed behind the scenes, for the coaches and all that. And I think it'll happen, especially in basketball. And football, it feels a little less likely. Like, you're going to keep the border war alive, obviously, and you have to. But I don't see a ton of CSU New Mexico games happening in football, or like Nevada, some of these schools that are going to feel especially left behind. Like, I don't know if they're going to be itching to. If you're Wyoming, yeah, you want to play CSU, you want to keep the border war alive, but are you going to be willing to schedule Boise State, San Diego State? Probably not. You're probably going to tell them to kick rocks. And I don't blame them if that's the approach that they have. I also think it would not be the smartest, because regionally, these games make sense for all these schools to schedule each other. It's cost effective. I am interested to see how all of that plays out. Aaron, I have no desire to play Air Force out of conference. Football is a trap with the option, and basketball is rarely more than a Q4 game. Yeah, I just won't miss it all that much. Taylor says he'd rather play UNC Greeley than Air Force. I think there's an argument to that in terms of more local interests. Just there's more UNC alumni living in Colorado than there are Air Force alumni. That's just the reality. And you can kind of help UNC if you're CSU by playing them. That's more us doing them a solid, but I don't have beef with that. We can help raise all tides here, or raise all ships, whatever the fuck the expression is. Excuse my language. Mile High can shout out my guy. Do you think the change in play calling is going to yield better results, with Mummy being part of Norvell's staff for so long? Is it going to be same as the first? That's a good question. I think it's time to shake things up. So I'm excited to see. Now, honestly, I don't really know, because I've never gotten to see Matt Mummy as a play caller up and close. I know he was kind of the lead play caller for Nevada early on in 2019, and I believe the years leading up to that, but it was a collaborative effort. And I think it'll still kind of be collaborative, like Bill Best as the run game coordinator, Matt Mummy as the pass game coordinator, but the lead play caller, based on what I have reported, Norvell as the head coach. These are all guys that have worked with each other for a decade. And I think like promoting Bill Best to run game coordinator is more about helping elevate his coaching profile and potentially landing him, like an OC gig somewhere at some point down the line than anything. But I think it'll be similar. I don't think it's going to be night and day from what we saw. But I mean, just naturally, somebody else with their making the decisions, I think we'll see a little bit of a change there. I was interested to see that, or I was surprised to see that they actually ran the ball more with Mummy at Nevada than they did with Norvell, which I don't think a lot of people would have guessed. It's all the comments about four verts and, full air raid. They've never really run a true air raid. Maybe we see that for the first time ever, but given what you've recruited at running back, I don't really see that happening either. So I think it'll be different, but I don't think it'll be night and day. Tim, what do you think of private equity investing in college partners? Are you excited to root for the BlackRock Crimson Tide? I don't want private equity with their hands anywhere near college sports, because I have seen what private equity has done to a lot of industries, including the one that I work in. And I just think that it's a very, very dangerous game, especially if you're not getting those results you want right off the bat. Then what happens? Are they just going to tear down the league and sell it for parts? Like, I think there's a lot of potential pitfalls that come with inviting private equity now. If you're a league like the Pac-12 and the gap in resources is so significant between you and like the SEC, is there potentially incentive to explore it? Probably, especially if they're going to inject you with, $100 million in cash or something like that. Nothing comes for free though. All right. Some games for you guys to watch this weekend. I had some stats about CSU. I'll talk about them on the next show. Just that while there's been some skepticism regarding CSU actually being a contender in the league, and obviously the next 3 games are going to be big, you look at some of the metrics, they're pretty favorable since the start of league play. KenPom has CSU ranked 3rd in both offensive and defensive efficiency. The Rams are 2nd in effective field goal percentage. They're also 2nd in defensive effective field goal percentage. Number 1 2-point shooting team, number 1 free throw shooting team. Those are all very encouraging. That's all very sustainable. One thing that did stand out to me, CSU turns the ball over a little bit too much, and they don't create a ton of turnovers. So that's an area that could come back to hurt the Rams. Some games to watch this weekend. We got Wyoming at San Diego State, New Mexico at Utah State. That's the biggest game. And then UNLV Nevada is deceptively kind of interesting. Which one of you hot and cold teams is going to show up and win a rivalry game? But certainly New Mexico, Utah State is going to be a lot of fun. I think because Utah State's consistency scares me a little bit more, I just feel like they're going to slip up less down the stretch. That's a gut feeling. I think rooting for New Mexico makes sense from CSU's standpoint, but really all these top teams are going to have to play each other one way or another. So it's all going to sort itself out. But if you're the Rams, you kind of just got to focus on your side of the street. Can you go 2-1 over the next 3? Can you steal one against New Mexico? And now all of a sudden you're in a really favorable spot as far as the tiebreakers go. It's a really big stretch for this team, and whether they live up to the moment or not, I am very excited to see. It's been a lot of fun though. Eric says, how do you think Colorado State's basketball team will do in the Pac-12? I think they might do pretty well. I think the Pac-12 is going to be an awesome basketball league, and I think embracing basketball is a big part of the vision for Pac-12. I think, so long as you can, keep the coaches you have, like obviously right now I'm thinking through the lens of Nico Medved taking this program into the Pac-12. Could that change? Like, is Minnesota going to open up this offseason? Do they finally hire the local kid to, bring him back to resurrect his old school? We'll see. But I feel pretty excited about the direction of basketball, especially as they inject a little bit more money into the program here. I think there's going to be some modernization or some, I think they're going to modernize Moby Arena is what I'm trying to say. They're going to, kind of add some stuff there. I think they'll add some luxury seating, extend it out a little bit towards Plum. I'm not entirely sure what that's going to look like, but they've got the space to do it. And especially after going to some other arenas around the country, I do think it's definitely time. The atmosphere in Moby when it's rocking is solid. I will say, and I know we have from an alumni standpoint, in the season ticket holder standpoint, kind of an older fan base on the hoop side. Moby could use a little bit more juice. The crowd's been a little docile at times. Like when it gets intense late in the game, they get going. But I don't know if we have quite the buzz as like Utah State does, or some of these other, the Pitt, something like that. Need the students to get it going. So I challenge you, if you're a student listening, get a little bit rowdy. Get your people around you rowdy as well. Let's make Moby a really tough place to play. All right, that's all I've got for you guys this morning. I'm losing my voice, so I'm going to head on out. I'll have more content coming your way on the written side. Great time to become a DNVR diehard. I've got hockey coverage if you're into that. I'll be right about the Avs tonight. Big matchup against the St. Louis Blues. Much love, y'all. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.